I'm 75 and I've lived long enough to watch every certainty I had about life turn out to be wrong. The strangest moment of my life wasn't a tragedy. It wasn't a loss or a failure or anything that would make a good story at a dinner table. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when I was sitting in my garden, and I realized that almost everything I had been absolutely sure about, everything I had built my life around, argued for, staked my reputation on, had turned out one way or another to be wrong. My name is George. I am 75 years old, and I have spent the last several years trying to figure out whether that realization should frighten me, or whether it is the most honest and freeing thing that has ever happened to me. I haven't reached a clean answer yet, but I think the searching itself might be the point. I want to tell you about the man I was at 30, because he is almost unrecognizable to me now. Not because I've changed dramatically or had some great transformation, but because the certainty he carried, the absolute, unquestioned certainty he had about how life worked and what it meant, was something I can barely imagine holding now. He walked through every room like someone who already knew the answers. He wasn't arrogant, not exactly. He was just sure. And there is a particular kind of confidence that comes not from arrogance, but from having simply never been seriously wrong yet. That was me at 30. I had a picture of life in my head, and everything I saw I filtered through that picture. If something fit, I kept it. If it didn't, I set it aside. At 30, I was absolutely certain that hard work was the only honest measure of a man. I believed this completely. My father had worked himself to exhaustion his entire life, and I had watched him do it and decided that this was the shape of a good life: effort, discipline, output, results. I believed that the men who struggled financially did so because they hadn't worked hard enough, hadn't wanted it badly enough, hadn't been willing to sacrifice what needed to be sacrificed. I held this view not cruelly, but with genuine conviction. It organized the world for me. It told me who deserved what and why. And for a while it seemed to hold up. Then I watched my closest friend, a man who worked longer hours than anyone I had ever known, lose everything in a matter of months through no real fault of his own. A business partner who lied, a market that shifted without warning, a bank that called in a loan at the worst possible moment. He did everything right. He worked harder than I ever had, and the outcome had almost nothing to do with his effort. I remember driving home after helping him move boxes out of his office on the last day, and I remember the feeling in my chest, not grief exactly, but something more disorienting than grief. It was the particular sensation of a belief loosening, of something I thought was bolted to the floor beginning to shift. I didn't let go of the belief that night. I held on to it for several more years, actually, but it was never quite as solid again. That is how it tends to happen, not in a single moment of revelation, but in a slow, quiet accumulation of experiences that press against a belief until one day the belief simply no longer holds the same weight it once did. You don't always notice the exact moment it goes. You just find yourself one day no longer saying the thing you used to say, no longer feeling the certainty you used to feel, and you have to work backward to figure out when and where it left you. At 40, I was certain about something different. By 40, I had softened somewhat on hard work as the whole measure of things, but I had replaced it with something else. I was certain that the people closest to you were the ones who knew you best. I believed that intimacy meant being fully understood, that the people who loved you could see you clearly, and that if they loved you anyway, that was proof enough of who you were. My wife, my brother, my oldest friends, I trusted their perceptions of me almost more than my own. If they thought I was a good man, I was a good man. That was enough. What dismantled this one was slower and more painful. It wasn't a single event. It was the gradual discovery made over years, not days, that the people who loved me most had sometimes built a version of me in their minds that wasn't entirely accurate, not because they were dishonest, but because love has its own way of seeing. My wife loved me, genuinely and deeply, but she also saw in me things that weren't entirely there, and missed things that were. My brother, who had known me since childhood, understood certain parts of me with extraordinary precision, and was completely blind to other parts. This isn't a criticism of them, it's just the truth of how people work. We don't see each other whole. We see the version we have constructed, assembled from the pieces we were given. And so the certainty that love equals clear sight began to come apart in my hands. What replaced it was something more complicated and honestly more interesting. The understanding that being loved and being fully known are two separate things, and that expecting someone to love you and also see you perfectly and completely was asking for something that no human being can actually provide. That realization didn't make my relationships smaller. It made them more honest, but it cost me the comfort of believing I was fully known, and that comfort, once lost, is not easily replaced. I want to stay with 40 for a moment longer, because there was a second belief I held then that I haven't mentioned yet. At 40, I was also certain, completely certain, that I knew what my life would look like at 60. I had a clear image. I had worked toward it deliberately. The house, the financial position, the shape of my days, the way my children would grow up and what they would become, the version of myself I would inhabit by then. I wasn't naive about difficulty. I knew life could be hard, but I believed that steady effort in the right direction would produce something close to the future I had imagined. My son did not become the person I had pictured. My marriage went through something in my early 50s that I did not see coming, and that I still do not entirely understand. The financial position I had worked toward was disrupted by circumstances I could not have predicted. And the man I was at 60 looked at the image he had constructed at 40 and recognized almost nothing. Not because everything had gone wrong. Some things had gone better than I had imagined. But the future as I had pictured it simply did not arrive. A different future arrived instead. And for a long time I measured that different future against the one I had planned and found it lacking. It took me years, embarrassingly many years, to realize that I was grieving an image rather than a life. By 50, my certainties had shifted again. I had lost the confidence of 30 and the comfortable assumptions of 40, but I had built something new to replace them. At 50, I was certain that I had finally developed good judgment. I believed I could read people accurately. I believed I could assess situations with a clarity that younger people hadn't yet earned. I believed that the mistakes of my 30s and 40s had taught me enough that I was now finally someone who understood how things worked. I was proud of this. Not loudly proud, but quietly, deeply proud. It felt like something I had genuinely earned. Then I made one of the most serious mistakes of my professional life at 53. I trusted someone I should not have trusted. Not because I was careless or rushed. I took my time. I thought it through. I used every tool I believed I had developed. And I was wrong in a way that cost me significantly and set back work I had spent years building. The experience didn't break me, but it did something perhaps more lasting. It broke my confidence in my own confidence. And that is a strange and destabilizing thing to lose, because confidence in your judgment is the thing that allows you to act at all. Without some degree of trust in your own perception, every decision becomes impossible. But with too much of it, you stop looking carefully. You stop questioning. You assume you already know. What I was left with after 53 was something harder to name. Not doubt exactly, not paralysis. Something more like a permanent low-level humility that I hadn't chosen but that had been installed in me by experience. I began to check myself more, to ask more questions, to stay a little longer in uncertainty before deciding. And while it was uncomfortable at first, and while I missed the ease of the man who simply trusted his instincts and moved forward, I eventually came to understand that this slower, more cautious way of navigating the world was not weakness. It was just closer to the truth of how much any of us can actually know. There is something I want to try to say about what happens to a person when enough of their certainties fall away. Because the natural assumption, and it was my assumption for a long time, is that what's left is emptiness. That without firm beliefs and clear convictions, a person becomes unmoored, drifts, loses the thread of who they are. I expected that to happen to me, and for a period of years in my early 60s it felt like it might. I went through a long, quiet stretch where I wasn't sure what I believed anymore about almost anything that had once seemed obvious, not in a dramatic or despairing way, just in the way of a man who had watched too many things he was sure of turn out differently than expected, and who had stopped being willing to build walls out of certainty the way he once had. But something unexpected happened in that space. Or rather, something unexpected grew in the absence of the old certainties. What grew was curiosity, a genuine, unhurried curiosity about life that I had not felt since I was a young man, before the weight of conviction settled over everything. When you already know how something works, you stop really looking at it. When you stop being sure you know, you start looking again. And there is a quality of attention that returns to you in later life if you let it. That is different from the attention of youth. It is not the sharp, hungry attention of someone building a future. It is quieter than that, slower, more patient, more willing to sit with a thing without needing to name it, or use it, or decide what it means. I find myself at 75 genuinely uncertain about a great many things I once felt I had settled, about what a good life actually requires, about whether the things I sacrificed for were worth what they cost, about what I might have been if I had walked through different doors, about whether the regrets I carry are pointing towards something true, or whether they are simply the natural weight of a long life looking backward. I don't know the answers to these questions. And what surprises me, what I would not have believed if someone had told me at 30 or 40 or 50 that this was coming, is that not knowing them does not feel like failure. It feels most days like honest living. I am not going to tell you that everything works out, or that wisdom arrives in time to save you from your mistakes, or that getting older brings a peace that makes the losses feel smaller. None of that has been entirely true in my experience. Some things do not work out. Wisdom often arrives too late to be practically useful, and some losses stay exactly as large as they were the day they happened. But what I can tell you, what I believe, as much as I allow myself to believe anything firmly anymore, is that a life that has been genuinely examined, even when the examination is uncomfortable, even when what it reveals is not what you hoped, is still preferable to the life I lived in my 30s. So certain, so sealed, so completely convinced that the map I was holding was accurate. The map was not accurate. It was never going to be accurate. No map of a human life ever is. And I wasted years being angry about that. Quietly, privately angry, in the way that people are angry at things they cannot change and cannot admit are beyond their control. I thought the world owed me the future I had planned for. It took me an embarrassingly long time to understand that the world owes no one any particular future at all. What it offers instead is more interesting, not easier, not more comfortable, not more fair, just more interesting. A set of experiences you could not have scripted, moving in directions you did not anticipate, shaped by forces you did not fully understand, producing a person, if you're willing to keep paying attention, that you could not have imagined when you were young and sure and standing at the beginning of everything, utterly convinced you already knew how the story went. I am 75. I have been wrong about most of the things I was most certain of, and I am most days genuinely glad that I lived long enough to find that out.